Hi everyone, and welcome to the PC-12 Nets Differences training module. The key points for the PC-12 is we just have to do a few things a little bit differently. So to begin with, the two cots that are cleared on the PC-12 is the Voyager that we currently use, and it's the new critical cot, but only the one that's without the nitric, and that's cot number 1. Okay, to get both of those cots fitted into the aircraft and make sure that the emergency exit is still clear, we need to move the front stretcher mounts towards the rear. We'll show you how to do that in more detail. We also have the opportunity where we can put a seat where the rear stretcher would normally go to carry a passenger, a parent or a guardian. And when we do that, we just need to make sure that the oxygen mask is within reach. So we have to move that to a different location as well. Okay, and lastly, we can only carry that person if they are a passenger. We can't take them as a patient. Sitting position only for the flight. All right, let's go into a bit more detail as to what we need to do to prepare the PC-12.
Firstly, we need to take some of the standard equipment out of the aircraft, which is the removable seat, both the front and the rear stretcher, all of the Douglas track protective strips, the plastic strips, and the rear stretcher mounts, and lastly the suction container in between where both stretchers go. Next, and most importantly, we need to move the front stretcher mounts to the rear of the aircraft by 100 millimeters. There are markings on the floor to show where the stretcher mounts normally go, which is indicated by the yellow dots next to the locking pins, and the stretcher mounts need to move to the rear 100 mils to where the blue dots are lined up with the locking pins. This is to ensure that the emergency exit is clear regardless of which cot we're carrying. Next, we need to transfer the cot from the Mansell lifter or even St John's Furno stretcher onto the PC-12 stretcher. Prior to loading the cot onto the aircraft, we need to ensure that it is moved from the ground handling position into the loading position. We also need to ensure that the rear facing seat is angled to the side of the aircraft so that it does not get damaged. Now we're ready to load the cot onto the aircraft. This requires a minimum of 2 trained and qualified personnel. If we're parked on a slope or in windy conditions, it's advisable to get other crew, such as the Nets team or St John's ambulance team, to help and assist stabilise the cot. Once the cot is fully secure in the front stretcher mounts, ensure that the 2 restraining straps are secure in the Douglas tracks. Next, we need to move the cot into the flight position, and this is to ensure that the emergency exit is clear at all times during the flight. Next, ensure that the cart is placed in front of the folding clip deck bag and secured with the straps. The Nets bags are secured behind the rear cargo area. Make sure that the blue bag, the airway bag, is on the left-hand side in case the Nets team need to access it in flight. If an additional passenger is required to be taken, an additional rear-facing seat can be fitted to the aircraft where the rear stretcher would normally go. Ensure that you have a seat with a shoulder strap that starts from the right-hand side of the seat. When fitting the seat to the aircraft, there are blue dots on the floor to help align where the retaining pins go on the seat. Lastly, the rear oxygen mask needs to be moved so it's closer to the additional seat so that it can be accessed in flight easily. Make sure that the oxygen mask is connected via the rear oxygen port. Prior to flight, double check that the cot is in the flight position. Ensure that it is secured to the floor of the aircraft via the restraining straps in the Douglas tracks, and complete a 4-pin check to make sure that all 4 pins are fully engaged into the fixed clip deck. Post-flight, the aircraft needs to be unloaded and reconfigured. The first thing we need to do is remove the additional removable seat from the right-hand rear side of the aircraft. Next, we can unload all of the next equipment, including the folding clip deck and the cart. When unloading the cot, the procedures are essentially the reverse of what we did at the start. Ensure that the restraining straps are disconnected, the cot is moved into the loading position, and the rear-facing seat is angled to ensure that it does not get damaged. When unloading the cot from the aircraft, ensure you've got 2 fully trained, qualified people. And if you need to, you can always use additional net staff or St John's staff to assist in stabilising the cot as it's being lowered. Once the cot's on the ground, make sure that it is transferred from the loading position into the ground position before you move it away from the aircraft. When reconfiguring the aircraft, ensure that the front stretcher mounts are moved forward 100mm back to their original position. This is indicated by a yellow dot on the floor of the aircraft, lined up with the locking pins on the stretcher mounts. Replace the rear stretcher mounts and the Douglas Track protective plastic strips back into the aircraft. Make sure we replace the suction container back to the wall of the aircraft. And finally, if we've completed the flight for the day, we can move the oxygen mask back to the original position. Finally, we need to load the stretchers back onto the aircraft, replace the standard removable chair, and now it's ready for further tasking.
Okay, so that wraps up the PC-12 Nets Differences training. Remember, the key points are there's only 2 cots that we can put on the PC-12. The Voyager we currently use, and critical cot number 1 without the nitric. Remember, we've always got to move those front stretcher mounts towards the rear to keep the emergency exit clear. We can put a seat in the back for a parent or a guardian, but only if they're a passenger, not a patient. We've got to make sure that the oxygen is within reach for them as well. All right, if you need some more details, don't forget, read the manual online to get more information. Thanks for your time.